I was 17, living a life that felt both mundane and thrilling at the same time. High school was a battlefield of social hierarchies and hormonal surges, but my small group of friends, Mark, Sarah, and Emily, were my solace, my refuge from the chaos. We were the outcasts, the ones who preferred the company of old horror movies and late-night philosophical debates to the vapid parties and gossip of the popular crowd. Mark, always the adventurous one, had a restless spirit that yearned for exploration. The vast, untamed wilderness that surrounded our sleepy town, with its dense forests and whispering pines, held a certain magnetism for him. He'd spent countless hours poring over maps, legends of lost pioneers, and tales of cryptids lurking in the shadows of the woods. I, on the other hand, preferred the safety of the known, the comfortable confines of routine and predictability. Still, I couldn't deny the intrigue in Mark's eyes, the contagious energy he exuded as he plotted his grand adventure into the unknown point one warm afternoon. Mark finally convinced us to venture with him. Sarah and Emily, ever loyal to our little crew, agreed, though a hint of hesitation flickered in Sarah's usually confident eyes. I, being the least enthusiastic of the bunch, found myself reluctantly dragged along, a knot of apprehension twisting in my stomach. The forest was a world apart from the manicured lawns and paved sidewalks of our town, a place where sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy, casting an eerie, greenish light upon the forest floor, and as we trekked deeper into the woods, a sense of unease settled over me. The air grew heavy and still, the chirping of birds replaced by an unnatural silence. The trees, gnarled and ancient, seemed to lean in, watching us with their skeletal branches. It was a suffocating atmosphere, a stark contrast to the open fields and familiar surroundings we were used to. Mark, in his element, strode ahead, oblivious to my growing discomfort. He was like a child in a candy store, exhilarated by the thrill of the unknown. This was his dream, his chance to finally experience the wildness he had read about, and he was determined to savor every moment that we walked for what felt like hours, the path becoming increasingly obscure. The forest floor was carpeted with a thick layer of damp leaves, muffling our footsteps and creating an unsettling sense of isolation. Mark, in his boundless enthusiasm, began to share tales of local legends, tales of skinwalkers, shapeshifters that preyed on the unwary, that I scoffed, trying to dismiss the stories as folklore. I wanted to believe in logic and science in the tangible world, but the atmosphere was thick with an unsettling energy. I could feel it in the goosebumps that rose on my arms, the quickening of my heartbeat, and the sudden, inexplicable chill that seemed to snake its way down my spine. The woods felt wrong, like something was watching us, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. Suddenly, a twig snapped nearby, and a shiver ran through me, my eyes wide with fear. We all froze, our hearts pounding in our chests, holding our breath, ears straining to pick up any other sound. I saw Sarah and Emily's faces, their expressions turning from excitement to pure terror. In that moment, I understood that the adventure was no longer exciting. It had transformed into a nightmare. We were trapped in a place where shadows held secrets, and the whispers of the wind carried an ominous threat. This was my first time encountering the darkness of the forest, and Mark, ever the overenthusiastic friend, had brought us to this point. The forest we found ourselves in was part of the vast, sprawling wilderness that encompassed much of the American Midwest. The trees, mostly oak and maple, were ancient, their branches gnarled and twisted, like the limbs of some forgotten, monstrous creature. Sunlight barely filtered through the dense canopy, creating a perpetual twilight that added to the unsettling atmosphere. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a fragrance that was both earthy and vaguely unsettling. The area had a long history, a dark undercurrent of whispers and folklore. Native American tribes had once roamed these lands, their stories filled with spirits and creatures that lurked in the shadows of the forest. Even the pioneers who had settled the region had spoken of strange occurrences, unexplained disappearances, and whispers of entities that defied explanation. It was a place where the veil between worlds seemed especially thin, a place where the supernatural felt almost palpable. Mark, the catalyst for our predicament, was a complex mix of courage and recklessness. He'd always been a dreamer, a child who lived in a world of his own creation, fueled by a thirst for adventure and a fascination with the unknown. He had a certain charisma, a magnetic quality that drew others to him, despite his sometimes reckless tendencies. However, beneath the surface, there was a vulnerability, a yearning for connection and acceptance that often led him into situations he couldn't control. Sarah, on the other hand, was the anchor of our group, a pragmatic and fiercely loyal friend. Her calm demeanor and steady presence had always been a source of stability for us. Even in the face of danger, her fear was tempered by a pragmatic need to assess and strategize. She was the voice of reason in our little group, the one who kept us grounded when Mark's enthusiasm threatened to overpower us. Emily, the quietest of our group, was a whirlwind of contradictions. She was a talented artist with a vivid imagination, often finding solace in the beauty of nature. However, she also harbored a deep-seated fear of the unknown, a fear that she tried to mask with a facade of nonchalance. The forest had always been a place of awe and terror for her, and our current situation was bringing those conflicting emotions to the surface. And me, I was the most conflicted of the group. I was the one who'd always preferred the safe and predictable over the unknown, the one who preferred the comfort of my books to the uncertainty of exploration. Now, trapped in the oppressive atmosphere of the forest, I found myself filled with regret and a gnawing sense of fear. Mark's adventurous spirit had dragged us into a situation I never wanted, a situation that threatened to unravel everything I thought I knew. We were all bound by a peculiar sort of friendship, a shared history of awkward adolescent years and a desperation for acceptance that in this environment, the forest and its hidden threats dominated our existence. The sense of being watched, of being hunted, became more and more intense with every passing moment. The shadows deepened, the silence became more profound, and the air grew heavy with a sense of dread. We were a group of teenagers, thrust into a world we were ill-equipped to handle. Our childhood fantasies of exploration replaced by the terrifying reality of an ancient, sinister presence. We had stumbled into something far older, far more powerful than any of us could have ever imagined, something that would change our lives forever. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the forest floor, the sense of unease intensified. The once familiar sounds of nature, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of insects, were replaced by an oppressive silence, punctuated only by the occasional snap of a twig or the distant hoot of an owl. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, anticipating something ominous that we pressed on, our pace quickening with every passing moment. The fear that had been simmering beneath the surface now bubbled over, manifesting in hushed whispers, frantic glances over our shoulders, and a shared sense of dread. The path had vanished completely, replaced by a tangled mess of undergrowth and fallen branches that snagged at our clothes and scratched our skin. We were lost, utterly lost, and the forest seemed to revel in our growing desperation. Then the whispers started. At first, they were faint, barely audible, like the rustling of leaves or the sigh of the wind. But as we continued to wander through the deepening shadows, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, weaving themselves into the fabric of the forest, filling every corner of our awareness. They were guttural and inhuman, filled with a malice that sent shivers down our spines, that we huddled together, our fear a palpable entity that bound us closer. The whispers seemed to surround us, taunting us, mocking our feeble attempts to escape. They were a constant reminder of our vulnerability, our utter helplessness in the face of whatever lurked in the shadows. Sarah tried to maintain a semblance of order, reminding us that panic would only make things worse. But even her normally calming voice trembled slightly, that I started seeing things, shapes moving in the periphery, eyes gleaming in the darkness. I jump at every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, convinced that it was the creature from Mark's stories, the Skinwalker, coming for us. My rationality was eroding, replaced by the raw terror of the unknown. I found myself glancing at my friends, hoping to find reassurance, but their faces were contorted with a mixture of fear and disbelief. We were trapped in a cycle of paranoia and dread, each shadow, each sound feeding our growing terror, that we stumbled upon a small clearing, a patch of moonlight piercing through the dense canopy, offering a brief respite from the oppressive darkness. But even here, the whispers persisted, weaving themselves into the silence, reminding us that we were not alone. And then we saw it, a pair of glowing eyes, perched high in the branches of a nearby tree, watching us with an unnerving intensity. The eyes were like burning coals, filled with a predatory intelligence that sent a wave of icy dread through me that a low growl echoed through the clearing, a sound that vibrated through the very air, sending a jolt of pure terror through our bodies. The creature shifted in the branches, a dark, shadowy figure that seemed to meld with the darkness. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen, a grotesque parody of humanity. And I knew, with a bone-chilling certainty, that we were in mortal danger. We scattered, the primal instinct for self-preservation overriding our fear of being separated. I ran blindly through the undergrowth, the whispers pursuing me like an unrelenting predator. Branches lashed at my face, leaves clung to my clothes, and the earth beneath my feet was a treacherous tangle of roots and rocks. I could hear the sounds of my friends in the distance, their panicked cries echoing through the forest, but I dared not slow down. Not for a moment as I ran. The events of the past few hours began to flash through my mind. I thought about Mark's boundless enthusiasm, his relentless pursuit of adventure, and how it had led us to this terrifying situation. I recalled the hushed conversations we'd shared about local legends, the stories of skinwalkers, creatures that could shapeshift and prey on the unwary. Had Mark, in his fascination with the supernatural, inadvertently summoned this creature? Or was it just a terrible coincidence, a cruel twist of fate? My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a scream, Emily's voice piercing the night. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest, the fear of losing another friend adding a new layer of terror to my already overwhelming sense of dread. I knew I had to find them, to help them, but the forest seemed to conspire against me, the darkness swallowing me whole. As I stumbled through the undergrowth, I noticed a faint light in the distance. A flicker of hope sparked within me, a beacon in the overwhelming darkness. I pushed forward, my legs burning, my lungs screaming for air, driven by the desperate need to find safety, to find my friends. The light grew stronger as I approached, revealing a small cabin nestled deep within the woods. It was a dilapidated structure, its paint peeling and windows boarded up, but it offered a glimmer of hope in the overwhelming darkness. The cabin door creaked open as I approached, revealing a wizened old woman with eyes as dark as night. She wore a tattered shawl, and her face was etched with the lines of hardship and untold stories. She looked at me with an unsettling mixture of pity and disdain, her lips barely moving as she spoke in a voice as raspy as dry leaves. She warned me of the dangers of the forest, the creatures that lurked in its shadows, and the price of disturbing the ancient balance of nature. She also spoke of a way to fight against the supernatural creature in a ritual that involved the souls of the corrupted and sacrifices. The old woman's words were unsettling, filled with a cryptic wisdom that both frightened and fascinated me. She spoke of ancient rituals and forgotten powers, hinting at a world far older and more sinister than I could have ever imagined. She spoke of Mark's overcuriosity about the folklore as a mistake that brought the creatures of the forest alive. This gave me a hint that we should never have bothered getting so deep into the forest, a clear example of how overenthusiasm can make you blind and make you a target for supernatural creatures. As she spoke, a sense of urgency washed over me. I knew I had to find my friends, to protect them from whatever lurked in the shadows. But the old woman's words lingered in my mind, a constant reminder of the dangers we faced. Time was running out. We needed to act quickly. Each passing moment was a race against an unknown enemy that was growing stronger with each human soul that it corrupted. The forest was pressing in on us, and the old woman's warnings echoed in my ears. We were trapped in a web of fear and uncertainty, a delicate balance between hope and despair. The cabin was a haven, but its safety was fragile. The forest held its secrets close, and its creatures seemed to be moving closer and closer with the passage of time. And then I heard the low growl again, closer this time, and the distinct sound of cracking bones and flesh. The danger was imminent. The growl grew louder, closer. The old woman's eyes widened in fear, her grip tightening on a worn wooden staff she held in her hand. She whispered ancient words, a guttural incantation that sent shivers down my spine. It was a desperate plea, a desperate attempt to ward off whatever was approaching. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that we were about to face the full fury of the creature we'd unwittingly awakened. The cabin shook, the walls groaning under the unseen force that pressed against them. The old woman gasped, her eyes wide with terror. She pointed towards the boarded-up windows, a look of sheer panic in her eyes. Then, with a terrifying crash, the windows shattered, splintering into 1,000 pieces. A dark, shadowy figure emerged from the debris, its eyes burning with an unholy light, its form shifting and contorting in a way that defied the laws of nature. That IT was the Skinwalker. The creature from Mark's stories, the being that lurked in the shadows of the forest, had finally revealed itself. It was a grotesque mockery of humanity, with limbs that stretched and twisted in unnatural ways, skin that seemed to shift and change like oil on water. Its eyes were like burning embers, filled with a malevolent intelligence that chilled me to the bone. I was staring straight into a demon's eyes. The old woman screamed, her voice a high-pitched wail that was quickly cut short by a sickening crunch. The Skinwalker moved with terrifying speed, its claws tearing through the frail woman's body with ease. I was frozen in terror, unable to move, unable to scream, as the creature savaged the old woman who had tried to help us, who had offered us shelter, who had warned us of the dangers of the forest. IT turned its gaze to me, its eyes burning with a cold fire. I stumbled back, my body trembling, my mind racing. The Skinwalker stalked towards me, its movements fluid and silent, a predator closing in on its prey. I knew, in that moment, that I was about to die. This was it, the end of the line. But then something unexpected happened. The Skinwalker stopped, its gaze shifting away from me, towards the darkness beyond the cabin. It seemed startled, confused, and before I could register what was happening, it was gone, vanishing into the night as quickly as it had appeared. The silence that followed was deafening, filled with the echoes of the old woman's scream and the lingering scent of blood and decay. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against the backdrop of the chilling silence. I was alive, inexplicably so, but my mind was reeling from the horror I had witnessed, from the raw terror of encountering a creature that seemed to exist beyond the realm of human understanding. That I rushed to the old woman's body, hoping for a miracle, that maybe I could save her, but there was nothing I could do. Her lifeless body lay on the ground, a stark reminder of the creature's power, of the devastating consequences of our adventure. And with her death, something else became evident. The creature's power seemed to be linked to the act of killing. It seemed to feed on death and terror. The Skinwalker was gone, but the forest remained, a silent, ominous presence that pulsed with a dark energy. The events of that night had shattered my perception of reality, ripped away the veil of the ordinary, and revealed a terrifying truth. The world was not as I had believed it to be. And now, the weight of revenge and the desire to get justice for the old woman filled my thoughts and fueled my desire to continue in the journey. The forest was my enemy, and the Skinwalker was my target. My journey of vengeance had just begun. But then, something unexpected happened. Sarah appeared from behind a tree, her eyes blazing with a newfound determination. She was clutching a rusty hunting knife, a tool she'd inherited from her grandfather, a man who had always instilled in her a fierce sense of self-reliance. She'd never been one for violence, always preferring to de-escalate situations with logic and reason. But the sight of the Skinwalker devouring the old woman had triggered something primal within her. She charged at the creature, her fury a blazing inferno. The Skinwalker, taken aback by her sudden attack, stumbled back, momentarily surprised by her unexpected resistance. Sarah moved with a surprising agility, her small frame a whirlwind of motion. She slashed at the creature with a hunting knife, a desperate, ferocious attack that surprised even herself. It moved with speed and an unnatural force. The Skinwalker attempted to swat at her, but Sarah dodged swiftly, her movements now reminiscent of a fighter trained in a deadly art that I watched in stunned silence, my fear giving way to a sense of awe. Sarah was a force of nature, a whirlwind of fury, a tiny human defying a monstrous, supernatural entity. She was fighting for her life, fighting for her friends, and her determination was infectious. It ignited a spark of hope within me, a flicker of defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. Her actions were a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was always a choice, a chance to fight back, to refuse to be a victim. The Skinwalker retaliated, its claws slashing out, tearing at Sarah's clothes and leaving deep gashes on her skin. But Sarah persisted, her eyes locked on the creature, her fury driving her onward. She fought with a ferocity that I never thought possible, a fierce determination born of love and loyalty. It was a fight for the survival of her group, and she was willing to sacrifice everything to protect those she cared about. Emily emerged from the shadows, her eyes filled with a mixture of terror and resolve. She had been hiding, paralyzed by fear, but Sarah's courage had stirred something within her, a dormant strength that had been waiting to be unleashed. She picked up a fallen branch, a crude weapon, and joined the fray, her movements hesitant at first, but growing more confident with each swing. That I still stood there, paralyzed by fear and a strange mixture of fascination with Sarah's ability to fight. I was a passenger in my own story. I could see them fighting, but I was unable to help. It was like watching a movie unfold before my eyes, unable to pause it, rewind, or fast forward it. I wanted to help, but I was simply unable to move. I was in shock, frozen by the sheer horror of the situation. The Skinwalker's presence was a constant reminder of my helplessness, my vulnerability. The battle raged on, a desperate struggle between human resilience and supernatural power. Sarah and Emily fought with incredible courage, but the Skinwalker was relentless, its unnatural strength and agility a constant threat. The forest seemed to echo with their struggle, a symphony of growls, screams, and the sickening thud of flesh against flesh. The scent of blood filled the air, a grim reminder of the brutality of the situation. It was a deadly dance where one side was destined to win, and it was becoming increasingly clear that humans were on the losing side of it all. As I watched Sarah and Emily fight for their lives, a slow, dawning realization crept into my mind. I was not helpless. I might not be a warrior like Sarah, but I had skills that could be useful in this dire situation. I had always been the observer, the one who analyzed situations and sought patterns. And in this desperate fight for survival, that ability might be the key to our escape, that I scanned my surroundings, my eyes searching for anything that could be used as a weapon, a tool, a source of leverage against a monstrous creature. My gaze fell upon a pile of rocks near the cabin, a forgotten remnant of a construction project. An idea sparked in my mind, a glimmer of hope in the overwhelming darkness. I was no fighter, but I could strategize, I could plan, I could use the environment to my advantage. That I started gathering rocks, stacking them strategically, creating a path that would lead the Skinwalker towards a specific point near a fallen tree that had exposed roots that could trip the creature. It was a desperate plan, a long shot, but it was my only hope. It was a way for me to contribute, a way to be a part of the struggle, to make a difference. That I also noticed that the Skinwalker seemed to be susceptible to loud noises and abrupt movements, its reactions being disproportionate to normal human reactions. It could be a way to distract the creature long enough for Sarah and Emily to escape, even if it was for a short time. With renewed purpose, I started shouting, banging rocks together, and creating as much noise as I possibly could. The Skinwalker reacted violently, its attention diverted from Sarah and Emily. They took the chance to escape, running in opposite directions from the cabin, aiming for the forest's deeper parts. My plan was working. The Skinwalker, furious from the distraction, charged at me, its eyes burning with malevolent rage. I didn't hesitate. I kept banging rocks together, creating a deafening cacophony, and as the creature ran towards me, I quickly moved to the side, trying to lure it towards the fallen tree. It was like a scene from a movie I used to watch with my friends, only this was real and I was the hero. And it worked. The Skinwalker, blinded by rage and the chaos I created, tripped over the exposed roots and tumbled into a ditch, a guttural scream of pain and fury escaping its lips. It was a small victory, a fleeting moment of hope in the face of overwhelming terror. The creature's body convulsed as it tried to get out of the ditch, and in that moment of vulnerability, I took a large rock and threw it at the creature's head, hitting it right at its eye. I waited for the creature to get up, prepared to keep throwing stones until it died, but it was motionless. It was finally gone. The Skinwalker was defeated. I had managed to contribute to the fight. I was no longer the helpless observer. I had found my place in the struggle, and it had given me a sense of purpose, of meaning, that I had never known before. I had discovered a strength within myself, a resilience that had been dormant, waiting to be awakened. The fight had changed me. I was no longer the same person who had ventured into the forest with a sense of apprehension and a desire to avoid the unknown. I had faced my fears, taken action, and found a newfound courage within myself. The old me would have panicked, would have succumbed to fear, but I had pushed past my limitations and emerged stronger, more resilient, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The forest remained a dangerous place, but I no longer felt helpless. I had discovered a strength within myself, a newfound purpose. I was no longer just a survivor. I was a fighter, a protector, a beacon of defiance in the face of darkness. I needed to find my friends, but I knew that I would never be the same person again. That I found Sarah and Emily near a small stream, their bodies bruised and bloodied, but their spirits unbroken. They were exhausted and shaken, but the sight of me, alive and victorious, gave them a renewed sense of hope. We huddled together, sharing stories of our ordeal, our voices hushed, our words laced with a mixture of relief and fear. We knew that the fight wasn't over. The Skinwalker was gone, but the forest remained, a lurking threat that could reappear at any moment that we needed a plan. We needed to figure out how to get out of the forest, how to return to the safety of our town, how to ensure that this horrific experience never happened again. We needed to find a way to put an end to the creature's existence for good. But we also needed to come to terms with the emotional weight of the night's events, the trauma that had taken root within us. The fight was not over yet. It was only pause. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, took charge, her voice calm and steady despite the turmoil she was undoubtedly experiencing. She assessed our situation, our injuries, our supplies. We were lost, our resources were dwindling, and the threat of the forest lingered. But we had survived one night, and that gave us a small measure of hope. The old woman's warning remained in our minds, and it filled us with a sense of urgency. We needed to solve this now, before the creature returned. Emily, still shaken by the night's events, found solace in sketching in her small notebook. Her drawings, normally filled with the beauty of nature, now reflected the darkness they had encountered. The sketches were dark, chaotic, and filled with a sense of dread. But there was also a hint of resilience in her work, a reflection of the strength she had found within herself. The art was a way for her to process the trauma, to channel her fears and anxieties into something tangible that we decided to follow the stream, hoping that it would eventually lead us to a familiar landmark, a road, a path that would guide us back to civilization. The forest seemed to grow darker and more oppressive with each step, the silence punctuated only by the sound of rushing water and the occasional snap of a twig. We walked in silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts, our minds replaying the events of the night. We were changed, irrevocably so, but we were still together, and that was a source of comfort in the face of overwhelming fear. That as we continued our trek, the sun began to rise, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. It was a beautiful sight, a stark contrast to the darkness we had experienced, but it did little to alleviate the lingering sense of dread. The forest remained a constant threat, its silence a chilling reminder of the horrors we had faced. It was a reminder that the world was filled with things that we could not comprehend, things that could shatter our sense of security and expose our deepest fears. That as we walked, we started hearing a distant noise. The sound of footsteps and guttural growls, getting closer and closer as the minutes passed. The creature was back. The fight was not over, and we needed to act quickly. The sound of the creature's approach grew louder, more menacing. The forest seemed to hold its breath, anticipating the unfolding chaos. We pressed on, our pace quickening, our hearts pounding in our chests. We reached a clearing, a natural amphitheater surrounded by towering trees. It was a perfect arena for a final showdown. The creature emerged from the shadows, its form shifting and contorting, its eyes burning with an unholy light. It was larger than before, its body seemingly infused with a dark energy that rippled through the air. The Skinwalker seemed to have evolved, absorbing the dark energy from the souls it had corrupted. Sarah and Emily stood side by side, their faces grim, their bodies tense. They had rested for the past few hours, but their bodies were still recovering from the injuries suffered during the previous night. They looked at each other with determination, their eyes reflecting a fierce resolve. They had faced the creature before, and they were prepared to do it again. "It's time," Sarah whispered, her voice a low growl, reflecting the fear and adrenaline running through her veins. She knew that this was their last stand, their final chance to end the reign of terror that had plagued their lives. The Skinwalker let out a guttural roar, a sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the forest. It lunged forward, its claws outstretched, its movements swift and deadly. Sarah and Emily dodged the attack, their reflexes honed by their previous encounters. The fight was on. The battle was brutal, a savage dance of desperation and fury. Sarah and Emily fought with a ferocity born of fear and survival. They used the environment to their advantage, dodging behind trees, using rocks as makeshift weapons, and fighting with a determination that shocked even themselves. They were a symphony of chaos and fighting, but the creature was relentless. The Skinwalker was faster, stronger, and seemingly more resilient than before. It easily defended against every attack, and its attacks were precise and deadly, hitting Sarah's arm and leaving a deep wound. The creature landed a powerful kick on Emily's stomach, sending her flying into a tree. Emily's body convulsed, and she remained motionless on the ground. Sarah's eyes burned with rage and sorrow. She moved forward, attacking the creature, her fury blinding her to the danger. But in a swift movement, the Skinwalker kicked Sarah in the ribs and sent her flying a few meters away. Sarah lay on the ground, coughing up blood and unable to move. She was severely injured and with little chance of recovery. And then I saw it, a small, hidden cave near the clearing. An idea flashed through my mind, a desperate gamble, a last-ditch effort to turn the tide of the battle. I knew the creature's weakness. It was afraid of loud noises, and a small cave could amplify the sound immensely. It was a desperate, potentially fatal strategy, but it was our last hope. The only way to stop the creature was to kill it once and for all. That I rushed towards the cave and started banging rocks together, shouting at the top of my lungs, creating a deafening cacophony of noise that echoed through the clearing. The sound reverberated through the cave, creating an incredibly loud, almost unbearable noise. The Skinwalker recoiled, its form contorting in pain as the sound bombarded its senses. It seemed to be in pain. It seemed to be terrified. Sarah and Emily were in a critical condition, but as the creature was distracted, I ran toward them and grabbed them. I dragged them towards the cave's entrance, trying to escape from the creature, trying to find a way to protect them and save their lives. The creature was in pain, but it was still moving, getting closer and closer. The Skinwalker roared in frustration and pain as the sound inside the cave intensified. It was losing control of its senses, its body convulsing and its form distorting in a terrifying display of agony. It was trying to get inside the cave, but the intense noise was making it almost impossible to move. It stumbled back a few steps, its eyes wide with fear, its movements slow and erratic, that I dragged Sarah and Emily further inside the cave, pushing them towards the back, a dark corner that offered a glimmer of safety. I knew that the cave's acoustics could either save us or kill us. I knew that the cave could amplify the noise to a dangerous level, creating an unbearable sound that could kill the creature, but it could also kill us in the process. It was a desperate move, a gamble with our lives, but it was our only hope. The Skinwalker stumbled into the cave, its body thrashing in agony. The sound intensified, the echo reverberating through the cave. The creature stumbled back, its body convulsing violently. Its form was distorting, its features contorting into a terrifying, grotesque mask of pain and despair. It was collapsing. It was dying. The noise was excruciating. It felt like my eardrums were about to burst, my head throbbing in agony. I covered my ears, shielding myself from the onslaught of sound, but I couldn't escape it. The cave was amplifying the noise, and it was becoming unbearable. The sounds were torturing the creature, but it was also torturing us. We were in a war, and in this war, collateral damage was unavoidable. And then it stopped. The noise subsided, fading into a faint echo. The silence that followed was deafening, filled with the lingering sound of the creature's final breaths. I slowly uncovered my ears, my head spinning, my body trembling. I was alive. We were alive. We had survived. That I looked at Sarah and Emily, their faces pale and bruised, their bodies weakened from the ordeal, but their eyes held a glimmer of hope. They were alive. We had done it. We had defeated the creature that had haunted our lives, the creature that had shattered our sense of security and revealed the terrifying truth of the world. We had faced our fears, we had fought for our survival, and we had emerged victorious. The forest remained a dangerous place, but we were no longer afraid. We had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, more resilient, more determined. We had learned a harsh lesson about the world, a lesson that would forever change us, but it had also brought us closer together, forged an unbreakable bond between us. The ordeal had broken us, but it had also made us stronger, that we eventually found our way out of the forest, stumbling onto a dirt road that led back to our town. We were exhausted, injured, and emotionally scarred, but we were together, and we were alive. The forest had tried to destroy us, but we had prevailed. The fight was over. The events of that night would forever be etched into our memories, a constant reminder of the horrors we had faced, but also a testament to the strength of the human spirit, the power of friendship, and the enduring desire for survival. We never spoke of it again, not to anyone else, not even to our parents. The trauma of the experience was too profound, the secrets too dark to share. But we carried the memory of that night within us, a shared experience that bound us together in a way that no ordinary friendship ever could. It had been a gruesome experience, but we had come out of it alive, and that is what mattered most. The world was a darker place after that night, but we were no longer the same naive teenagers who had ventured into the forest seeking adventure. We had seen the darkness, faced our fears, and emerged stronger. We had found a strength within ourselves that we never knew existed, a resilience that would guide us through the rest of our lives. We were scarred, but we were alive, and that was enough. Years passed. We went our separate ways, pursuing our dreams, building our lives. But the memory of that night in the forest never faded, a silent testament to the fragility of life and the enduring power of human resilience. We never forgot the old woman, the sacrifice she made, and the lessons we learned. We never ventured into the forest again. The forest was a place of death, and we were alive, and that is what mattered the most. Sometimes on a quiet night, when the wind whispered through the trees, we'd catch a glimpse of those burning eyes in the corner of our vision, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks just beyond the veil of the ordinary. But we were prepared. We were ready. We had faced the darkness, and we had survived. We were ready to face any future challenge that came our way. The forest is a place of mystery and danger. It's a reminder that the world is full of things we don't understand, things that can challenge our perception of reality. But it's also a place of beauty and wonder, a place where we can find solace and reconnect with nature. Be careful when venturing into the unknown. Never underestimate the power of the wild. Share your thoughts on this story in the comments below. What did you think of the ending? What would you have done differently? And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more terrifying stories like this one. Hit that notification bell and be prepared to face your worst nightmares. Click the link below to discover even more thrilling content that's guaranteed to keep you on the edge of your seat.